Lara,
Okay.
thank you. Lara is supposed to be joining us as well, and she said she had to leave at 8:30. So,
Okay.
but we have Catherine with us, and so let's begin. Welcome. In terms of my report, I reported to you, I think, by email, my meeting with Kathleen Foley last week, and a couple of things came out of that. One was her openness to meeting jointly with us about Fjord Trail, and she was going to check with John first about whether there was anything, that would prevent us from doing that, and there isn't. But John's recommendation, and one that Kathleen has subscribed to, is that it would be best to hold off on that meeting until the planning board has met officially with the Fjord Trail people, which is currently scheduled for August 11th. So I can understand that, and I guess, and so I said that I would consult with you all, but my sense was that we'd proceed that way. But I did respond by saying that with your permission, with the members' permission, I would make that request formally to the village trustees via an email, so that it's on the official record that we would like that meeting to take place. So if there are no objections to that, I will go ahead and do that and send the official request, and then we can talk about dates after August 11th, when
Okay.
we would like to meet in a workshop.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Wasn't that the purpose of meeting the village trustees or the mayor, so that we can put our thoughts together, or at least we are in coordination with them instead of raising our voice as a separate group, or getting something? Wasn't that the purpose of meeting them?
Well, yes, and I think that is still the purpose of it. I think that,
But if it's after with the trail presentation, then we miss the chance of communicating with the village?
oh, I don't think so. I think we're going to get, as you know, our plan is to get a much reduced presentation from the Fjord Trail that focuses on the areas that we're going to pinpoint as an independent body are of interest to us, and then sit down with the village trustees and compare notes in anticipation of the environmental review process, which will be coming afterwards. So I think that we can accomplish what we wish to accomplish, which is, to the extent possible, because maybe we won't all agree, but to the extent possible, to go forward at the next opportunity for meaningful public input, which is the environmental impact process, with as unified a voice as possible. So I don't think this is undermining the purposes of our of the joint meeting at all.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes. Jack, one other comment.
Yeah.
But Sue does actually have a point. If we're going to have this meeting and bring up the exact same points that the village board is bringing up, what's the purpose of duplicating the efforts if it's not coordinated out of the gate? And maybe as a stopgap to that, it would be nice maybe to just have a perspective from the village board, at least so that we know these are the 3 areas that they're focusing on, and here's what they're planning on doing, saying, asking for, so that we're not, really wasting the time of the Fjord organization by literally talking about identical things that may be discussed or in progress of being taken care of by the village board. Because there were a number of things in that prior meeting that I know they are working on or they want to work on. And I would love for us just to have, to my other point about roles and responsibilities, to know kind of going into that meeting, this is our box that, we are aligned on, that we're going to play within, and we get to focus on that, as opposed to it being sort of lots of different things.
Mhm.
Well, I think that the village board, in fact, I can almost guarantee what the village board's response to that would be, is that they raise their questions, they express their concerns at the May 25th meeting. And so that our looking at the May 25th meeting, as I think we're going to need to do again, either independent, either singly or in a group, will give us a summary, an up-to-date summary of what the concerns of the village are at this point. And I think the village is expecting a response to those concerns to appear in the scoping session for the environmental impact statement. I think what the village would like from us is our own perspective on what ought to appear in the scoping for the environmental impact statement. And if, knowing what their concerns are, we are aligned with those concerns, it strengthens the concerns. If knowing those concerns, we have some additional concerns, it broadens the concerns. In any event, it amplifies, without, I think, being duplicative, it amplifies the public input in the process at that point, which is the next meaningful, in fact, the only meaningful so far, opportunity for input. So again, I don't see our looking at this as we're proposing to do and then sitting down with the board to see where we are, our integrated thoughts in preparing an opinion for the environmental review process. I think that's a positive thing. I don't think it's wasting anyone's time. My impression, and I sent you that list, I believe today, that MJ sent to me of the public presentations that they're scheduled to take place between now and August 11th. And MJ's suggestion that rather than anticipate having to attend other presentations, which, judging from what she said, there are not going to happen between now and then, or not likely to happen between now and then. She also suggested that we go back to the May 25th village board presentation, which leads me to believe that there are going to be no significant changes in the master plan between now and the time that we are going to meet on August 11th. And in fact, it's probably unlikely that any changes to this proposal will not take place in the master plan phase at all, but will take place in the environmental impact phase. So I'm looking forward to that. I don't think anything that we'll say at our meeting on the 11th will result in a change to master plan. I think it may result in, it may be incorporated into the environmental impacts process. So, so it's complicated, I know that, but I do think this is the best thing that we can do, considering the kind of amorphous nature of the process that's taking place. I don't think our going to an event on Little Stony Point, or even to the presentation at Dutchess Manor, where there will be people there to answer questions more or less informally, is going to give us more information. So I think we need to take the May 25th presentation that was made to the village as the proposal for the master plan, and ask for that proposal to be whittled down for us to focus in on August 11th, and then sit down with the village board to discuss the points of commonality or disagreement that we have amongst ourselves. There are going to be two parts to this discussion, and one is content, and the other is going to be tactics, because whatever we may come to as a set of requests, modifications, whatever, to be presented to the state Parks Department as the lead agency on the environmental impact, whatever the content is, there's going to be a process of having proper attention paid to our requests. And forget, the state agencies are required to listen to public input. They're required to take it into consideration. They are not required to act on it. That's not part of the law. So we could go through this whole process and raise valid issues and come up with either solutions or whatever. They are not required by law to act on them. They're required to tell us why they're not acting on them, but not required by law to actually adopt those suggestions or changes. And so in any process like this, an important part of having your voice heard is the tactics that are used to impress upon the agencies in charge the importance of their paying attention. And that is equally as important in terms of our combining with the village trustees, as will be making specific suggestions. So I think we need to keep that in mind as well, that if this becomes a partnership to affect change, it's going to be, yes, it's going to be content and suggestions, but it's also going to be a political process.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what's the timing from the village board to produce this list of tactics or requests for this?
I wish I could tell you. A second letter, I contacted, I guess on Monday, I wrote to Kathleen about the fact that John First had sent an email to the attorney at the Parks Department a week more, well, about 10 days from this past Monday back, about timing, specifically about what we could expect on timing. And the answer he got back from the state attorney, from the attorney at Parks, was that she would come back to him at the beginning of last week with basically a schedule of when we could expect it. And I was copied on that, and not hearing anything further, I wrote to Kathleen on Monday, this past Monday, and said, they're a week late, basically. And she said that she realized that, and she had spoken to John, and he was about to send out another request for information. But I haven't heard anything. That was on Monday. I haven't heard anything yet. So we can't answer no one can answer your question, Yaslin, until we get that back from the state.
Okay.
In general terms, they were supposed to begin the general EIS process, which is on the master plan, in June now. Um, it's unlikely that will happen because there are notifications that have to take place and everything. So I would say that we will get into the meat of it in the autumn. And it wouldn't surprise me if we got into the meat of the plan specifically on the Cold Spring section of this at the beginning of next year, but that's just speculation on my part. In the meantime, construction is supposed to begin at breakneck, which, you know, I have a problem with because I think it's creating negative impacts before we have a chance to discuss what they are or how to mitigate them.
Right.
Okay.
And when are we as a planning board going to discuss what we want the agenda to be on the 11th of August?
Well, that's something that I want to discuss tonight after we take up Catherine's action. Okay. Okay. So let me see what else there was for my meeting. Oh, yes. Just to follow up also, as I said, I think in my email, the mayor is open or has asked the planning board to help draft language with a subcommittee that's being set up to rewrite section 134 of the code, which is the zoning section of it, to strengthen language on off-street parking and the like. And I'm going to be asking for a volunteer from one of you, including Matt and including Lara, to take that on, if you don't mind, working with John first in developing draft language that can be presented to the rest of us, because I can't add that into my schedule to do it at the moment. So,
Which, you repeat the section number again? One,
yeah, it would be under, you have the code there. It's section 134.18.
134, yeah. 134,
18.
18.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. And whoever does take that on is not going to be wandering through the wilderness alone. John will be there to help, you know, draft language and the like. But I think that we, or whoever comes after us, is vulnerable with the language as it is now written for charges of arbitrary and capricious action if we turn down somebody who's asking for the same thing that 40 Main Street was asking for. And I think we need to strengthen that part of the code. So that is that. If we can move on, if there are no more questions or discussion, if we can move on to the minutes, right? I believe everybody has corrected minutes of March 10th and June 9th. Is that correct?
Jack, yeah, it's Karen. I got Matt's comments on March 10th, which I sent out probably half an hour or 45 minutes ago. I didn't see them earlier with his email. He had sent them earlier, but I didn't see them. So you should have his corrections for March 10th. I emailed everybody. And then for June 9th, I've incorporated Yaslin's comment and your comments so that everybody could look at them. And so if everybody, and I haven't gotten any comments for March 24th. So for the other two dates, June 9th and March 10th, if everybody is agreeable with those comments, then once we vote on them, I'll incorporate them in a final document. And then Jack, you can come to the village office and sign those. I just want to make sure everybody got all of that.
Okay. Well, if you all are comfortable, I am approving March 10 and March 10 and June 9 by resolution tonight. I'm not sure about March 24th. Anyway, but if it's all right with you all, then if I could have a resolution that we approve March 10 and June 9th.
Okay, so we need, so
I
we
have,
would,
I have a question here.
Yep.
Is it March 10th? The reason we did not go through March 10th, it was because the new members were not available at that time. And the old members at that meeting were not, this is 3 left over from the previous board were not all present.
well,
I think it was that the reason that we didn't go.
no, I don't know that there was a reason that we didn't go through. I had sent them out back in March, both of them.
Okay,
Or-
yeah, I read those minutes. I have no comments or objections. I wrote to you, Karen,
Yes.
on that. Yeah,
I guess my question would be at this point with the March 10th minutes that Matt had not, just a couple of comments on, was everybody present at that meeting so that you can vote on them?
I was not present on the March 10th
You
meeting.
were not, so we don't have,
We
so
don't have
we
a
don't.
we don't
have-
have a quorum for
March
that, right?
So March 10th we'll have to table, right?
When Matt and Lyra come in.
Yeah, if she comes in, yeah.
Yeah.
March 24th, again, I didn't receive any comments at all. Is everybody here that was there do we have a quorum for March 24th?
We don't, I don't believe I was.
Yeah.
Okay,
On for that one.
so both of those we can table, and then the vote tonight would only be on June 9th. I know.
We are
But-
never going to approve
Well,
those.
here's the thing. Both of those March minutes, everybody has now seen them recently. And Matt has made very minor changes in some of the language, which I'm sure everybody, I would imagine would approve. So we can do those the next time. We will get it done. But if we don't have a quorum to do them, then we just can't. So we'll do the June 9th, I guess.
Okay. And
Okay,
may I have a resolution to approve the June 9th meeting minutes, please?
motion for the June 9th minutes.
Motion To
Yep.
approve? Okay,
Motion to approve the June 9th.
Yeah,
okay.
I second.
And
Okay.
seconded by Sue. Okay,
Okay,
so, thank you. Reports of the members. Does anyone wish to make a report? Either of you?
I made my usual trip to the park, and the comment from the 2 guys saying, "You are the only fan." We go so often. They wave to us, and they seem to have pushed forward maybe another 6 feet. I think they're trying to do a lot of enforcement in there. There's 2 major lines of rocks on the path. I don't know if you can walk on them later or not, but then they pushed out a little more. It's a smaller roll of rock, and then into the river, there seem to be old banks or something that they put more smaller rocks, and then medium-sized rocks to make a border type of thing. So the shoreline is not straight. It's, little bends or out, which I think it looks nice. And then there's another one facing more towards the opening of the river. I guess when the tide changes and so on, that probably would be the place where the water will hit more. That place is reinforced a lot. Garbage is as usual. That is a major concern. If I go through that is one major concern. who is gonna pick up the garbage? If, the park is great. Part of the trail or not is a separate question. The thing is, who is taking care of that park? Who is cleaning it? And who is, bearing the charges? That's my question.
Well, by contract between the village and the Parks Department, as soon as construction stops,
Uh-huh.
it becomes the village's responsibility to pay for the maintenance and to pay for all of the liability, all of the insurance. And that would continue until 2028,
Okay.
when it will revert back to parks. The village is a licensee, basically. The licensee agreement will come to an end, and presumably it will then be turned over to
Okay.
Fjord. Yeah.
Okay, well, the village better drum up volunteers. It's gonna be a lot of cleaning.
Yep, undoubtedly.
Anyway, but that's my report. Just,
Okay,
yeah.
thank you. Also, if any of you have seen the first poster for the Film Society, they are showing the films down at Dockside. I don't know how they're doing it.
I didn't go to the movie. It's actually the construction workers, two of them. One said, yeah, they had a movie there Saturday. So, but we didn't go. So I don't know how they do. Right now, it's only one middle part that has grass. The
Yeah.
rest is all fenced up. And then the grass part, I walk very carefully because people don't pick up behind their dogs.
Yeah, no, they do not there.
It's just disgusting.
I know, that's why I was wondering. Anyway, all right, thank you, Sue, for the report. We have no correspondence to deal with. And so let's turn it to you, Catherine. And if you would take us through again with the new referral, I hope that we can set a date for the public hearing and get this on track in a reasonable period of time. So I'll turn it over to you.
Wonderful, thank you. Since we last met, I had a site plan drawn up that laid out the space and what, as you can see from the proposal, how we would divvy up the space, what would be public space, what would be retail, what would be back of house storage. And based upon that, we had a discussion with Greg, who gave us a maximum occupancy number, 20, which is in the parking table for the front of space, the public assembly space, if you will, 25 total for that would include the back of space as well. So the other thing I wanted to mention as well is, as far as, at any moment during the day for classes, there would be mostly between 6 and 8 students at a time in each class. There may be a couple of classes in the late morning and possibly in the later afternoon that might have the capacity of 15, but that would be the high. So just to give you a sense of the foot traffic coming through is minimal. I was also able to ask the owner of the space if he would include in the lease a designated. He gave me 10 spots for my business solely, so that I know that Matt said that always helps to have some designated space since it is a shared plaza. The spaces are 33 in total, and so our operating hours will likely start most days at 9, maybe some days at 8, and we will finish by I would expect no later than 8 p.m. On the weekdays. And with the foot traffic, as I mentioned, most will actually be by foot versus that's really why I really sought out this space, because I want it accessible to the village, and particularly for students coming from after school, they can walk right from Haldane. So that is what I was able to update between that time and now. And the change of use, as I understand it, is that it is retail / commercial amusement. The retail is straightforward as the parking. I defer to you all for how we decide if the parking is sufficient for commercial usage.
Mhm.
Is there anything else that I can answer for you that I didn't in the first meeting?
I just have a
No.
quick question.
Okay,
On
good.
your, site plan, when you put proposed occupancy, I'm curious how you came up with that. Is that just like a number of employees that are gonna be there in each of the rooms? And then you just kind of guesstimated based on like what you just said about number of students per class? Is that kind of?
The number came from Greg in the building department.
Oh, Greg did that. Okay.
Greg did that. So my architect who drew up the plans gave this to him, and he responded saying 20 for the front assembly space, 25 for the overall occupancy. And he will create that signage.
Okay.
He didn't do it for this meeting, but yes,
Okay, so those are maximum then.
that's correct.
Those are maximums? Oh, got it. Okay.
Maximum 25 for the entire space, 20 for the front assembly space.
It says 29, total proposed occupancy 29.
So that was what my architect did. That was just her calculation. But the number 20 and 25 for the entire space came from Greg.
Got it. Okay.
Sue, do you have any questions?
I looked at the drawings. So the office and the retail space have no window, correct?
No, that's correct. They're in the back
Right,
section. If you
and-
look at the
there was a-
picture. Of
yeah.
Mhm.
There was a garage door, a huge garage door in the back.
Yes,
So that would be your exit in the emergency situation,
that's
or?
correct.
Okay,
It's an emergency exit, correct.
okay,
The public entrance is at the front of the building.
yeah, that we could see, but,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes, there's a loading dock,
yeah.
large in the back, yeah.
Yeah, okay. I thought it was logical to have that as the retail space, because if you have anything from there, you could offload, but I'm not certain if that's your plan. However, my question is if that would be the exit.
Yes, it would be the exit, and that back space is where the loading dock is a storage. So it will be an area that we will store for any sort of props that we need for our classes, and also retail supplies,
Mhm.
so that we can easily bring it into the retail space. So it's really just making a distinction between what is open and to the public, in the public eye, versus what we're using for storage. So that back entrance actually can be utilized in the way you just described, but it is an emergency exit as well.
Okay,
And the single bathroom meets code as well?
So that's Greg is looking at that. And if we do need to, I mean, we've already looked at it, and we know how to make it ADA appropriate if he says we need to.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you sent us subsequently also that the Grassos are writing into your lease the dedicated spaces. And I assume that a discussion that has taken or will take place with the main course, which, during their busiest hours are, to which spaces are going to be dedicated and which are going to be open.
Yes. So as you notice in the lease that they signed, they've given me 10 spaces. It does not conflict with main course in any way.
Okay. And just remind me again of your signage. That's going to be inside the windows. It's not going to be neon. It's not going to be flashing or.
No. And it's just on the glass. It's not on any part of the building.
Okay, that's great. All right. Well, a couple of housekeeping issues. We need to send this referral over to the county planning department because it's within 500 feet or 300 feet of a county road, 9D. And Greg will take care of that. And usually they respond very quickly in a matter of days, that they have no questions about it. John first advised me that after looking at this, we can declare this application as a category 2 action for the purposes of state environmental review, which means that no further environmental review would be necessary for this. But that would take a resolution of the 3 of us tonight in order to make that formal. And so that's, if no one has any objection to that amongst the 3 of us, then I would like a motion to do so.
So moved.
Okay, thank you, Sue. And second, yes?
Yes, second.
Okay, so that's taken care of. There needs to be a public hearing on this action, and that involves a couple of things. One is that 5 days, we as a group tonight need to set the date for the public hearing. And John tells me, well, we are required to post a notice of the public hearing in the local papers 5 days before the date we establish for the meeting. We are not required to call, according to John, to actually send out notices by mail, although it's conventionally we have done so, and I can't find an instance where we haven't. And if we do send out by mail, we have 2 things to deal with tonight. One is we need to pass a resolution that establishes, the area of the properties that would receive the notice by mail, and that's at our discretion. And it needs to go out. That does then need to go out 10 days before the date we set for the public hearing. So looking at the calendar, the first date that we could hold a public hearing would be our first meeting in
July.
it would be the first meeting in July, which is
Looking, trying to see the,
or-
the
sorry. It would be July 14th.
14th. Yeah.
And because that is, fairly late into the month, I think there would be time for Catherine to make the 10-day mailing requirements. So I would propose that we schedule the public hearing for July 14th.
Mm-hmm.
And so if I could have a motion on that.
Could I ask one quick question?
Yeah.
I thought from the first meeting, July 7th was the date that was discussed as a possible hearing date.
We don't meet on July the 7th.
It's
Oh, you don't?
It's a 2nd and 4th.
It's the
Thursday.
2nd and 4th of each month. And so it's because of the nature of the month, the 14th is the first meeting that we could actually do it.
I understand. Okay.
Regrettably, but
Yeah, but do we have to decide to whom are these letters sent?
well, that's step number 2.
Yeah,
So
yeah, okay.
if we could have a motion, please, to schedule the public hearing for July 14th.
Yep, I motion to schedule a meeting for July 14th.
Yaslin, thank you. And Sue.
Second.
Now, yes, according to John, there's nothing in the code that prescribes the area that the mail notification would go to. And so it's discretionary on our part. He says a good rule of thumb is 300 feet from the site, from the property that's being impacted. I can't actually, off the top of my head, draw a circle, of 300 feet around, but it is likely to be the homes up Oak Street, the homes heading north along
Marion.
Chestnut, possibly St. Mary's, and possibly M&T Bank, shopping centers.
But I think the residents, the homes or whoever, maybe the ones directly across the street and the one behind on Marion, is that Marion? Yeah.
Marion.
Yeah. There are a few, and then main course is the one, and the other one is Food Town and the gas station, and then the people right next to Wall Street at that corner there.
Right, that's an
Yeah,
Airbnb.
that's probably it.
That is probably it. You might have to go down, as I say, go north along Chestnut, across the street and north along Chestnut, where Wall Street comes in. I just don't know what the 300.
Yeah, but I think that 300 feet is really quite small radius when you think about it, and I think from wherever Chestnut, if you look at Food Town, main course, and the printing shop, and then if you shoot directly down and so on, I think the maximum probably going to the bank building. That's if that far. That's how I feel. I don't have the measurement, but I think it's quite easy to send out these letters. Should be, because a lot of them are business and they already exist. And then the guys at Wall Street at that very corner there, they already have all the business traffic from whoever. I don't think they should object to all these things.
I don't anticipate there would be major objections. I think it's just a matter of making sure that we're doing our.
Doing the right thing. Yeah.
I think that house actually is an Airbnb anyway. The one that's on the corner of Wall.
Oh.
So, all right, if you can work with Jeff at Village Hall, I believe, to get those addresses. Looking back at the history, because this is my first year as being chair here, so I am learning as we go. Looking back at the history, it's also been conventional that there be a record that these have been sent, which means that they should go out registered mail.
Yeah, and then they're supposed to return it, so you have the blue receipt, right. The return things, the receipt coming back, and give it to Jeff. So right. we know how many people responded and so on. So that's what I understand from the past meetings. And then also there is supposed to be a sign that says it's going to be public hearing on this date and so on. So that sign, the village can prepare it, I think, in the past. Yeah, and then you post that thing there on your window or something, so people know in general that there is a public hearing for.
Yeah, those signs are at the Village Hall, and you can come and pick them up.
Yeah.
So we keep them there.
So that's what I know for the past 3 years, that's usually the practice.
Yeah.
So Jeff will provide me with the form that I'm mailing out to alert.
Well, let me talk to Jeff. I know that, for instance, with the historic district, Sean usually sends a list of addresses, And then we look at the addresses on the tax map to determine who the people are at those addresses. And then there's a letter that we send to you, a form letter, and then you mail out to those addresses. Now, Jack, I'll ask Jeff if that's something that someone on the board should do, and then we take it from there, or,
Which part of that?
well, the part of determining the addresses, the 300 radius or
I think that's
circumference.
I think the village has the map and,
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, it could be that Sean just does that for ease of process.
Well, he has,
Sends it to us, but I'll talk to Jeff about it and I'll let you know. how we
Sean
do
has a brand new electronic map now to work with, so it's
Yeah, that's true, yeah.
much easier for him. But I think when we, it was Unicorn working with Jeff when we did the public hearing on building 1
Okay,
at Butterfield, that came up with the actual list. We agreed to and passed a resolution on the radius. And it was Unicorn's responsibility, working with Jeff, to actually do the mailing and
yes,
also to supply us ultimately with the proof of mailing that came
that's
back.
correct. That is the correct process for
Okay.
that, yeah.
Right. So we need a resolution, therefore, to adopt the 300-foot radius as the mailing area for notification, for mail notification. And if I could have a motion on that, please.
The three of us are busy tonight.
Gotta keep this to 3, right? Okay.
Yeah, we're getting stuff done.
Oh, Laura's here, hold on.
Oh, cool.
Oh, good.
I
Good.
have a
We can
question.
do
I have a quick question. So is the 300 radius what's written in the code? Where did we get that number?
I don't think it was written in the code. That was I think that was from Butterfield something project that then finally somebody suggested that. Is that
No,
history?
I believe actually it goes back, it derives from a state regulation, a recommendation.
Oh, okay.
Got it. Okay.
All right.
And until we bring our code up to speed, we're dealing with.
With that. Got it. Okay, cool.
Laura, we're about to approve a motion that would establish a 300-foot radius from 37 Chestnut Street as the area that would receive mailed notifications of the public hearing, which we've already scheduled in your absence for July 14th.
Apologies, sorry about that.
For July 14th. So there's a motion on the table to adopt that 300-foot radius, which was the same we did for.
Yeah, standard.
So if I could have a vote, please, all those in favor?
Well, did we move?
We move.
Did we
So
we have
moved.
a motion, Sue? All right, Sue,
I
Yeah.
second, yeah.
and your second, okay.
I thought we had. So I believe that takes care of the business tonight. Catherine?
Jack, I have another question is, I think during the public hearing or before that, are we supposed to have a more detailed plan from 37 Chestnut, as you know, the a lot more detailed things like lighting or all those things? Are we supposed to know those things?
I think, as far as of what I have seen, that the site plan that's been provided for us, in combination with the questions I asked earlier about signage, is sufficient as far as I'm concerned. If that is incorrect. If I am corrected by wiser heads, we can work with Catherine to get some more detailed information. But I believe that we now have a site plan, we have a parking table, we have assurances that the signage and lighting complies with the section of the code. We have assurances that the code regarding fire safety and sanitation are being complied with. The only open question is whether or not there needs to be, whether the bathroom needs to be modified. But that we will have that answer before we go to the public hearing. So I think as far as materials are concerned, personally, we're pretty close to being there.
Okay,
Okay,
just, yeah.
okay.
May I ask a couple quick questions, just since I'm new to the process? Am I allowed to, between now and the public hearing, can Greg come in and can I start the building inspection process with him?
I don't know the answer to that, but my sense is that you can probably start the process, but you can't, you don't have a building permit, so you can't start the work.
Not work, just the permit process. Can I begin that? Because
Let me check that tomorrow and get back to you. I'm really not sure. Laura, do you know?
So technically, I think the application has to, so it was referred to us from the building department, right? That's technically what happened. And then we have to approve it, which we can only do after the public hearing before it goes back to the building department. So technically, you're in the process of getting it approved, like you're already in the process of getting it approved with Greg. In terms of talking informally to the building inspector, I see no issue with that. And, especially if you still have elements of the interior plan that you're trying to work out to make sure that they would, just if you had questions about your interior that are not within our purview or part of our, what we're evaluating, I don't see any issue with talking to, I don't think there's any issue with talking to the building inspector, making sure that you've sort of crossed your T's and dotted your I's ahead of a potential approval, right? It still has to be like technically potential because it has not been approved by us. That's my understanding of the process. So I think there's no issue with talking to him, but I don't think that there's anything paperwork wise that can be pushed forward until the actual public hearing has been conducted, and then we as the planning board approve it.
So the approval that would happen after the hearing is the change of use.
Exactly.
Approval. That's the exact, okay. And
Right.
that happened quickly after the hearing, if the hearing.
I think it can happen on the date. Jack, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think usually we approve it. Oftentimes we can approve it right after the public hearing if if nothing comes forth that is problematic.
Of course. Okay. And and in between that time, if because Greg is well aware of the project and we do have this ADA question with the bathroom, if he's allowed to come in and look at the space and give me saying, these are the coding that you have to do, but I can't file anything until July 14th, correct?
I believe that is correct. I think as Laura said, that you can continue this sort of consultative process so long as you're not taking any actions based on that, because you don't have the approval. And the approval is not pro forma, something could come up and whatever. But we have the choice of either closing the hearing the night of the hearing or keeping it open for 2 weeks, which is what we did in terms of Butterfield. And that decision is usually made on
that night
questions that are asked by the public to which the applicant doesn't have the answers. And so if there are substantive questions that come up, and the information isn't available that night, the chances are the hearing would be extended for 2 weeks, but we're not required to extend it for 2 weeks. So, one hopes that by the time you get to that point, everything has been, taken care of. And so, but we do have to take the public's viewpoints into consideration, and we want to, it's not a burden, but so it's still an open question until we decide what to do.
And who places the ad for the hearing?
The village will do that. Again, speak with Jeff
Okay.
about that, but the village will place the ad. I believe that the language of the ad will also be the language of what you mail out.
Right.
Okay, so again, in working with Jeff on that piece of it, I would just coordinate that whole notification process with him.
Okay, and all of this comes from the escrow that I gave right to the time. Okay, that's what I just wanted to make sure. Okay, great. Okay.
And I actually have one more quick thing. I apologize for hopping on late. Did we also clarify that the applicant needs to provide the certificate of?
Yes, we
Okay,
did.
I just wanted to make sure that was, because, yeah,
You mean the proof of mailing.
proof of mailing for that, those were sent out after you consult with Jeff. That's perfect. So as long as you know that, and those are, because those have to be at that, we have to have those in hand at the public hearing,
Yeah.
I believe, to move
The
forward.
blue cards.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right, so as long as I register it, it's on the recipient's responsibility to return the stub or the
Yes.
receipt. No, I mean, how does that work?
They don't have to do anything. You just have
They don't
to,
have to do anything.
that
Okay.
you have to just prove that you sent it out and
You send it
inform
out with the-
anyone. You informed all the relevant addresses of the public hearing.
Got it.
Okay. All right, well, thank you very much, Catherine. And if there are any questions as this goes along between now and then, feel free, please.
Thank you so much. Thank you all very much.
You're
Have a good
welcome.
night. Okay, bye. Thank you.
Laura, are you still on an 8:30 sort of deadline?
Sort of, yeah. I can possibly extend to 8:35. I'm so sorry. Yeah, it's a crazy time of year, transitions.
It's fine. So let's, if we can, turn efficiently to the discussion of the Fjord Trail. I won't go back, Lara. I can speak with you privately if you want to about my correspondence or my conversations with the mayor about joint meetings and the rest of it. But what we need to decide as a group really has to do with the mechanics of how we're going to get a handle on defining what part of the master plan presentation that has already been given all over the place, what part of it we want to retain for our presentation, and those parts of it that we don't feel are any longer vital for us to discuss with the Fjord Trail. And there are just plain logistical difficulties in doing that because we don't have the presentation deck. And I doubt seriously whether we can get it. And so in reviewing, we are left with certain choices. One is to, as a group, go through the May 25th presentation and check off those slides in the presentation that we don't want included. We can assign teams to do that because it's an hour and a half presentation, I believe, with the questions. So that's one issue, is how do we physically or mechanically find a way to cut down the presentation? The slides are not even numbered, so we can't say, let's skip slides 1, 2, and 7. They're just not numbered. So we need to come up with a list of the core elements of the presentation that we want them to focus on. That's number one. Number two, we need to come up with questions that relate to the important issues that are left and arrive at a consensus of what those questions are. Now, on the June, I think it was June 9th meeting, Yaslin provided a list of 5 or 6 points that she felt, having watched the May 25th presentation, were the key points. And they are in the minutes of the June meeting. And they are, I think generally they are responsible, a responsible analysis. They don't cover the process going forward of, who, what, and when the environmental review is going to take place. But they do cover substantially many of the issues. Also, I just, in looking for guidance on this, spiritual guidance on this, if you go to the Article 1 of the code, of the zoning code, 134, there are 5 or 6 justifications for the zoning code that are like 2-sentence descriptions that seem to me to summarize all the areas of concern that Yaslin has mentioned and that others have mentioned, and that might serve as signposts for our questioning. In other words, once we have the important pieces of the presentation isolated, if we compare that against those paragraphs at the beginning of the zoning code, because they're really descriptions of what makes Cold Spring when it comes down to it. And so that might form a cogent package that could then be sent to Fjord Trail in advance that says, all right, paragraph of the zoning code at the introduction says, traffic control, I forget what it says, but it is a very concise description of what the concerns are in terms of why we control traffic here, why we need to control it here. And that we might just send to them in some form and say, how is your project taking into consideration this concern? That's actually in the code, which I think gives us a stronger voice in the sense if we're operating off the written code and not off our opinions. So that's as far as my thinking, it's been feeble on this, has taken me in terms of what the task ahead is. And so I'm throwing it open to everyone to.
What was the, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead. I'm finished.
What was the zoning code that you mentioned? What was the section that you mentioned? 134,
It's the first section.
First section.
the first section.
Of 134.1 or
134.1. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
So
Yeah,
no, go ahead.
I think that that seems really like a good direction to help give us a lens that is basically reflective of what our purview is as the planning board. I think that sounds great.
Okay.
I have a question here. Is it we have confirmed with them, the meeting date is August 11th. Okay, how far in advance do we need to tell them to prepare their presentation to us?
Well, I think we haven't discussed it. But I think that they will want, it will take no time at all to send them a list of slides that we want removed, I think they will probably want the questions a week to 10 days in advance. I'm just guessing, but that's what I assume. So at the
Okay.
beginning of August.
All right, and then my question, I guess maybe it's too early, but my question basically, and then for their slide, I would like to see clearly the relationship between all the departments. The park, the trail, the environmental thing, the whoever they are, and all these organizations that's involved. What's their relationship?
All right.
Clearly presented to us. And then the basic question is, for what kind of questions, for what kind of problems or progress, who is in charge? Who is responsible for what? I think that is very important, because once something starts, if there is any problems, we got to be able to talk to someone. That's my basic concern, because a lot of things thrown at us. Oh yeah, here's the environmental thing. There's fine, but who is there? Who is in charge? And you can't say Department of Highway. Who? Give us a person, okay? Then it's not trying to be difficult, but it really, for this kind of thing, if we want to be involved, we need to know those. I at least to me, it is something important. So I want a piece of paper or a slide presented to us. This is how everybody's related, instead of just listing the whole thing. And I think reading the email from you sent out, Carolyn, somebody, there was one email that you sent to us.
Yeah, Carolyn Bacon.
Yeah. I think she said something, it's actually the Marine department should be involved, but it's not in there. And what is allowed in the water or something that she said very clearly that something should be paid attention to. So I think that was a very important part, because it is related to the river. Okay, so environmental review has to have those things. So that's another thing, but that's my initial reaction. But fundamentally, who's in charge of what?
Okay. Carolyn, by the way, knows her stuff. She worked for the Economic Development Corporation.
Yeah,
Which,
I read her email. I think it was
yeah.
quite interesting comments, if nothing else. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I took that. That is duly noted. Thanks, Sue. How do we want to handle? What I would like to do is sort of assign to teams, because we can work in teams as long as we don't have a quorum, on our own time. And that is to just divvy up the presentation that was made, even though I think all of us have seen it, perhaps numerous times, that was made to the village trustees, and come up with recommendations of the slides that are no longer necessary, so that we can, by consensus, agree to a reduced set of, and we could divvy that up simply by the first 45 minutes, second 45 minutes, and the third 45 minutes of the present.
I just have a question about that as a useful activity. I think if we leave it to them to figure out how they want to put their content together, it'll save us a lot of time than sort of having to go through and say, we don't need these slides, don't need those slides, especially if we already have a list of questions
Yeah.
that we want to ask them. It's really up to them to figure out how they want to put that content together, whether or not they want to reuse previous slides or create new slides.
Yeah.
That would be my perspective. That could make this go a little bit faster for us. If we can, you know, either send you or send me or whatever, all the questions we have. And I mean, I'm happy to consolidate them down, get rid of duplications and say, here are these themes and here are these major questions. And then that's kind of in a sense what they're going to be, what we'd like them to respond to, in addition to your suggestion on the, how are you addressing, you know, these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things that the planning board is responsible for. To me, those are very, very meaty asks of them. Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense to me. And what I like about that is you can still say something like, you know, feel free to edit. And we can make a comment that, you know, we've all had different opportunities to attend different presentations. And so we've seen some of their previous presentations. So we wanted to send these more specific focusing questions, and please feel free to edit the presentation to make it relevant to these questions, you know. And yeah, I like that a lot, actually, because then it frees us up to think about, you know, exactly what we are trying to understand from the presentation rather than going through the slides. I like that. I guess go ahead.
I think it sounds great. That's what I was going to say.
Time saving is always appreciated. But making it more concise. I mean, I think it's really a good way to make it.
Yes, less foggy. Now the question, yes, and would you act as the contact for the questions? Can we feed them to you?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
And the question is until when? You know, I think if we randomly shoot an email to Yasmin and up to a certain point, she say, okay, cut off this, it got to be, so until when? We have that.
July 4th. I would say July 4th, because that'll then give me time to consolidate it. And then if we want to talk about it on the 14th and say, hey,
right, yeah,
this is what we have consolidated. Does this look right? And then Jack, you'll have what you need to draft a communication to send to them.
Okay.
That sounds terrific to me. I didn't mean to interrupt you, Laura. You weren't finished.
No, I was finished with that point. I was just jumping to the next. I had a quick question, and I'm sorry for, I apologize for my earlier question too, which is what section of the zoning code, because it's all 134. But do we know how many different zones? I'm just curious if from your viewings of the presentations or the information available, do we know what zoning districts the project runs through? Is it all through R1, or it's different zoning districts, right? Yeah.
It's different zoning in the village is if
especially as it runs through the village, right?
Yeah.
I was
for example, you know, us is residential, but directly across the street, which is 20 feet away, is light industrial usage. So they are spotted all over the place in the village. There is no one big thing. They're
right. My question is, do any of you remember from the presentations whether there was like a delineation of the different zoning districts? There was. Okay. No. That was my question. So that would be a question I would add. So okay, because then I think the
way that will play out, the actual articulation of that is going to be in the environmental impact statement. That is restricted to the Cold Spring piece of this. If it's felt that the proposal is going to have, in other words, they will identify impacted parties. And so it's very likely that, that impacted is the incorrect term, but nevertheless, um, that the Village Board of Trustees will be identified as parties of interest. It's possible that the planning board will be identified as parties of interest by this action, and it's possible that the zoning board will be identified. And it's in the comments from those three bodies that the impacts on things such as, the various zones through which potential impact is going to flow will be identified. But it's not, but someone has to say you're an affected party, basically, in order for that discussion to take place. At the moment, this is the only direct impact of the master plan is taking people from the train station across village property to Dockside. That's what's in the master plan. Okay. And so in terms of affecting or having different effects on various zones on the zoning map, those were going to either an alternative, which would, let's say, consider people going through Fair Street, or let's say walking up Main Street to the traffic light. It would be that process of looking at alternatives that would do a survey of what those where those alternatives would be having an impact. Okay, at the moment, it doesn't exist.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, maybe it's a little early, but cool. That makes sense.
Okay. Well, if that is it, and certainly a load has been taken off my mind, so I really appreciate it. Not that it was done for me, but I appreciate it. Before we go, Lara, we have to Shanghai you into approving the March 10th minutes because we didn't have a quorum of people who attended that meeting before you arrived, but we do now. And so, so could we have a motion to approve the March 10th minutes, please?
So moved.
Okay, I'm going to second that. All those in favor?
The March 10th, right?
March 10th, yes.
Okay.
We're not going
Aye.
to, okay. And we won't deal with the 25th tonight. So what do we have? Okay, do we have any new business? Any public comment?
Is there public today? No,
No, we haven't.
we haven't had public for a long time.
No, we will though, once again, they'll remember us. No board business to take care of, which means Sue, you can shut us down. With the motion to adjourn, because we're done. So may we have a motion to adjourn, please?
So moved.
Motion to adjourn.
Yes, yes, seconded. All those in favor?
Bye.
Right.
Okay. All right, thank you all very much.
Bye,
Thank
have a
you,
good evening.
Karen.
Thank you. Have a good
Yeah.
night, everyone.
Good
Bye-bye.
night.
Good night.
What do I do here?